also giving everyone the heads up that Kath and I are in Pennsylvania in a huge thunderstorm. So if we have connectivity issues, we will try and log back on, but fingers crossed, no connectivity issues.
I'll just start singing.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
We were driving around earlier and there were like trees down everywhere. So we were like, keep all the wires alive.
Exactly.
That's
Lauren, are
amazing.
you in New York right now?
I am. I'm in Brooklyn. I'm like 10 minutes away from your houses.
Oh, I miss it. I have to
do
say, I miss
feel
it
like
so much.
the New York tough and the people who have stayed there through have this really unique shared experience that like the rest of us aren't getting. Not being in New York.
Totally.
And actually, I'm not supposed to mention names, but I'm allowed to say that Claire Mazur is wondering, was there a thunderstorm 3 weeks ago when she was a panelist? And the answer is, Claire, yes.
Yeah.
It's out that day.
We're doing real country living here.
We're country bumpkins.
The power goes out all the time.
I was just going to mention, because I saw Claire asking a question too, that one of the best things that has happened since this started, Claire is all of our mutual friend, is that she dropped off Levain cookies to us one day.
Oh my gosh.
And she was outside and I could hear her voice. And obviously I've heard her voice on social media and through Zoom and all that stuff, but it was so amazing. And I was like, I want you to stay so badly. But it's weird. I wish that we had some more outdoor space because I don't drive. And so I can't we can't go to any parks. We've been running to this one park, but it's like you run 4 miles to the park, you walk around the park, and then you walk back, and that's like 3 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
So be happy you're in the nature, even if you're a little worried that.
No,
nature is to us.
Being able to take like especially weekend walks for like a longer amount of time, but even just to get outside during the day is incredible right now. And
so nice.
Spring has I feel like I'm seeing spring through different eyes.
Yeah.
Well, you both look great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you so much.
You're so sweet.
We dressed up for you.
We're getting.
Are you cutting each other's hair?
Yes, we both have.
She did a pretty good job, but there's like some weird little calyx going on.
She has a Pete Buttigieg tough trait here.
I think it looks really good. And we cut my dog's hair, who, by the way, is up here right now, and he may start barking, so I'll put myself on mute if he does. But it looks so bad. It's just terrible. And he was so upset afterwards.
And what about yours looks good.
It's because I haven't touched it.
Okay.
I think I can go a month or two more.
That's awesome.
And hopefully by then I will be able to go, or at least my hairdresser can maybe come here. But I haven't done. I thankfully got a haircut just like a month before this happened. So
with super short hair, I go every 5 weeks, and when it starts to grow out, I get a mullet quickly, which is not. So
okay, should we talk about more sophisticated things than your mullet?
Let's get started. And a few people are still joining, but as mentioned, Catherine and I are in a thunderstorm. So if we go out, we'll try and get back on as quickly as possible. But without further ado, we are really excited about today's Creative Women's Coffee. Catherine and I had such fun talking about the questions for this because they're questions that we honestly, authentically really want the answers to, because this is our fashion industry guru, Lauren Sherman. If you work in the industry, you want Lauren Sherman on speed dial. She is the executive editor at Business of Fashion, and she knows so much about the industry. If you guys don't subscribe to Business of Fashion, I highly recommend it. It is just like an encyclopedia of information and such a Bible. And she has really been on the front line of finding out how brands are dealing with the COVID time, and who's surviving, who's not surviving, what we should be doing to survive. So thank you, Lauren, for joining us today. We're so excited to talk with you and pick your brain.
And I've just got to brag a little bit more about Business of Fashion. I feel like 10, 15 years ago, breaking news would go to WWD or other publications, which are still really good. But these days, Business of Fashion is the go-to for industry analysis. I'm not getting paid by them. I just really love it. There's very few things I actually pay to subscribe to. So my professional membership at BOF is great. And if there's people on this call who are starting out in fashion or who work in fashion or want more industry insight, I'm honestly, in a non-plug kind of way, just saying that is the one source of news from the fashion industry that I check every day. So they've got some great articles, and Lauren heads up their New York office. So how lucky are we to have the expert on the Zoom today? So let's kick it off.
Thank you guys. You're making me blush, but also I really appreciate it. Thank you. And we are really trying really hard to like serve people like you in the industry. So it means a whole lot.
It's working.
You're doing
There's a lot of, even non-COVID times, there's a lot of times I text Lauren about an article that she or someone else has written saying a team meeting will be held at Lizzie Fortunato with us being, read this article, we're all going to discuss it because you guys plant some good seeds. So
Thank you.
if you haven't joined us before, this is going to be pretty fun and informal. Lizzie and I have a lot of prepared questions for Lauren, but we'd love you to chime in. So there's a chat open. If you want to submit questions, we'll answer them real time and or when the time is right at some point during the call. So please do not hesitate. You can put your Zoom and gallery setting to see both of us at once if you haven't already done that. And without further ado, let's ask Lauren some questions.
All right.
So some of the initiatives that Lizzie and I have been taking to sort of rescue the business right now have been really beneficial as they relate to our direct e-commerce business. We are writing handwritten notes for all sales, which leads to more sales because it's really beautiful loyalty. We've had some e-commerce wins with regard to reaching out to customers and saying, do you like this in red or blue? We launched the product and it sells because we're getting their direct communication. So we've been really nimble, but we've also been really committed to sort of loyalty during and building the direct business. But that doesn't take zero amount of time. I mean, that's a whole new pivot that's very, very time consuming. And we're kind of wondering for our own interest, what are your thoughts? Is this sustainable? Are brands going to have to maintain this level of engagement and storytelling, which of course we love, but I'm not sure if it's sustainable. What is this heightened engagement going to mean for the direct businesses going forward?
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, how do you scale personalization and how do you scale? And I actually talk about this with a lot of multi-brand retailers online and off. I just did this big report I wrote it in January and February, and then this happened and had to kind of rewrite a bunch of it, but it was like the future of online e-commerce for luxury brands. And so it was direct to consume. It did have to do with that. But, up until 4 or 5 years ago, most fashion brands didn't really have their own e-commerce. So it was all multi-brand retail. And now, I mean, that could be like a 5-hour conference call. But now the thing is that like a lot of these multi-brand retailers, the top tier of customer, Net-a-Porter, and if there's someone on the line who works there, do not quote me on these numbers, but like a very, very large amount of their sales comes from a very, very small amount of customers. Mm-hmm. So you guys know this, like there are people who spend $100,000 or $200,000 a year on clothes and they make up, and same thing at like Saks and
Moda,
Marcus and all of them, and like Hirschleifer's, all these different stores, any multi-brand retailer. And so, they spend a lot of time making that person feel good. But what about the person who spends like $3,000 to $10,000 a year, which is not nothing, but they don't get that kind of service. And now this was happening before COVID-19. Like there are too many options of where you can buy stuff. Mm-hmm. So if you want to keep a customer engaged, you have to essentially treat them like they are a VIP customer all the time. The question is, and it has always been the question, is like, how do you scale that? And there are services, there are platforms to help with that kind of thing. But I do think that, for smaller businesses, it is going to be really important in the short term. And maybe when you guys, when we're out of this, 3 months, 6 months, a year and a half from now, when you start hiring more people again, maybe you're going to hire more customer service people than you did in the past. Like, and you're going to pull back on some other element of marketing or because you're doing more direct, you won't have as many people on your wholesale team or what have you.
Sorry to interrupt you. We had just hired somebody this winter, actually, who started as part-time, really, really bare bones. I mean, really just pack boxes and actually fill e-com orders. And it's amazing how her job in 6 short months has blossomed from box packing is the least of what she does. She's responding to, 50 emails a day. She's responding to all the DMs, direct messages we get. During this lead up to Mother's Day, we've got some product on hand, but not everything. So she's responding to people prematurely before they even reach out to us to say, I noticed your product. You're a man shopping. This is not in our hands right now. Do you want to choose from these other products that the girls can ship in the next 3 days to get them by Mother's Day?
Right.
So
Yeah.
to your point, Lauren, that's gone from a role that I had hired as part-time to being like right now, probably our most full-time role on the team.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to continue.
Yeah, and I think like that kind of very intense one-to-one, it does just take more money. It takes more capital in some ways, but maybe you're going to spend less on Facebook ads or Instagram ads or whatever because you're getting the thing that they're saying a lot about in Asia right now. I mean, sales are down and it's not like there's some crazy bounce back. They talk about this thing called revenge shopping. There was this story about an Hermes store. There was a line out the door and they sold it, but it doesn't really exist. Like people in China are still pretty wary, but when they are going shopping, there's far fewer people going, but they're spending a ton of money because there's like much more intention.
Yeah.
So I think like, and I also think that, you know, there's going to be a real urge to accelerate the economy and just get everybody spending a ton of money again, and it's not the way to do it. I think the companies that, as you guys did the first time around, you grew your business it started like right out of the recession, right?
Exactly.
So you grew it slowly and carefully, and that's what you're going to do again. I think companies that think they're going to just like flood the market and suddenly be back up to where they were are in for a real rude awakening. Is that the cliche?
No, that's right. Yeah.
That's well said. Cool.
Well, speaking of kind of investing in different approaches to selling right now, obviously tons of wholesale orders are getting canceled. We're experiencing that. I read an article you wrote recently about how exclusive drops are working for a lot of lines, but I know in your article you were specifically talking about lines that had launched as direct-to-consumer lines. For lines like ours that are predominantly wholesale, to give you some background, we're about 75% wholesale, 25% direct. But as Catherine said, we are having a lot of e-commerce wins right now. We're nimble. We're able to like launch things on e-commerce and literally load cell phone pictures onto our website that are edited well, and we're selling out of those products. But we can't fill the huge canceled order gaps with those drops. So how?
Yeah, we're talking hundreds of thousands of wholesale versus, yeah, it's amazing when we have a single recycled glass bead necklace on e-com sell out, but that's maybe 5K relative to the 100K of canceled orders we've just done.
So I guess my first question is like, can we pivot to get those wholesale dollars back in drops? And then just from a financial perspective, does the drop model work? Don't you need tons of drops? Don't you need to invest in a lot of marketing to make sure the drops actually sell through? Like if there's not enough hype around them, who cares about the drops? And then as part two of that, if we do fill those holes with drops and other exciting e-commerce initiatives, do you think people miss that cachet of saying, I sell at this store? Because when we launched in 08, it was so prestigious to say, I sell at Bergdorf Goodman. And now, like, do people care?
I think to answer that first question, I think a lot of what is wrong with fashion is that it's very it's not the word, I'm not gonna come up, it's the end of the day, I get up very early, so it's echo chamber. So like everyone in the industry cares that you sell at Bergdorf Goodman, but does a customer really care about that? No. Like I don't think, and it used to be like if you wanted to get a feature in Vogue or Elle or something, you had to sell at one of the majors. Like none of that matters anymore. But I do think that like selling at stores, I think the model for retail, so for anyone who doesn't work in the business, doesn't know what wholesale means, it's basically, I mean, Kathleen, you could explain it quicker, but it's basically when a brand sells to a multi-brand store. And so the agreement is called a wholesale agreement, and it's a long story, but it's a really bad business model, and I don't understand why it exists, but I need to do more research on that. But it like puts the brands and the retailers in a bad situation. But anyway, the point being that like I still think if there's a really cool shop, like I love seeing you guys at Miriam Nassir's store. Like I love that store. I'm influenced by her. I think she's amazing. And so when I go in and I see your stuff in there, it does matter to me as a customer. And I think that like, there's a really interesting store in the East Village that I actually made Claire go to. It's called some Cafe Forget Me Not or something like that, or
Yeah.
Cafe Forgot or something. I'm way too old for it, but it's a very cool store, and they do have a bunch of different business models of how they work with brands. A lot of the brands just loan their product to them, but that store, if you're a brand that fits in with that store's aesthetic, like I do think that that's valuable to the customer. What I think is going to change is like every business is going to be far, far more direct, and then you'll use those avenues as marketing or what have you, and there will be less of them. And I think the one good thing about this, and it's, you know, if you saw today, Coach, the company that owns Coach Tapestry, they had losses of like almost $700 million this quarter. Their sales are down 20%. Like they have a lot of money and do a lot of sales, and they're even screwed. Like, but the people who are independent brands, like this is completely wiping out everyone's businesses. I would say the one good thing about it is if you're a smaller independent brand, when you start up again, when things start to get back to normal, you can do it in the way you want, and you can build out. I'd say with drops and things, if you look at like a Louis Vuitton, that's sort of how they operate anyway. Like they have a baseline product, but they have even their kind of collections. They don't go into the store at the same time. They'll drop a couple things every month, and then they'll have like special things that come out with the artists or the collaborations. That's like another layer. But what I think is good about the drops model is, one, if you have the kind of production that you can do on demand, and you can get something produced, and with jewelry, I'm sure it's very different, but like if you are a brand that does fairly simple knitwear, or maybe not knits, but fairly simple wovens that are pretty easy to do a turnaround, like there are ways to manage and it's getting easier and easier to manage your supply chain so you don't have as much inventory up front. It's not simple. Everybody has the supply chain and the inventory thing, and fashion in particular is the biggest issue, and it's super screwed up. But if you can get to the point where you don't really have a ton of inventory laying around, and you're just like, one of the brands I wrote about is this streetwear, it's kind of streetwear brand called Sporty and Rich.
Yeah,
just based in LA.
I got in a deep Sporty and Rich hole after you wrote about it.
I'm obsessed. I love it, but I think it's hilarious, but also I really do like the product. But the thing about it is, I haven't gotten that t-shirt yet that I bought, and I wrote the story quickly after, but I bought this t-shirt that she had reissued, and it sold out, and she reissued a t-shirt, a sweatshirt, and a pair of sweatpants, and it was the biggest order she had ever done, but it was all on demand. So like that was 2 weeks ago, and I got an email, they're going to send it out this week, so I have to wait for it. So it's not perfect, but what I would say is, like, I do think you can have scale with it, but it has to be, the Montclair has done a really interesting job of, they have these drops that they do monthly with cool designers, it only makes up 10% of their overall sales. I mean, that's still a lot of money because they have, I don't know, like $5 billion in sales or something. Again, don't quote me on any figures. But what they did, I did this big story with them, and I met the person who runs their logistics team. I met all the people who work there. And basically they took what they learned from doing those drops and they applied it to the main collection. Mm-hmm. So they started to, they were more focused about, like, it had to get to the store on that day, even though they hadn't promised it into the public. So it like tightened up their supply chain. They started making less stuff. And I do think it's not, an interesting case is Aurora from Brother Vellies, who does not have that business model generally. I think she's predominantly wholesale, like you guys are, maybe half and half. She has her own store, so it might be a little bit more, but she started like selling these scrunchy socks on her Instagram, and they're $30. And I went to buy a pair and they were sold out, and I messaged her and she's like, oh, they sold out. And now she's doing something where every month, I don't really understand, but I think it's like a surprise package almost that you give. And I think that kind of stuff is a good upsell and a good way to get people to buy more of the evergreen product or what have you. I also think another good selling tool for every brand, but like especially a brand like yours, is once the logistics get back up, like if your top half of your customers, if you had enough product that you could send them, or like the top 25% or even the top 10%, 10 items at the beginning of the season, and it's like try this on again. Like these are really hard things to scale, and they need technology. So
There are some good apps for try on now, which was part of our
yeah.
end goals pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but I think like the thing is, like a lot of these things, people are like, yeah, I don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with all this technology. But now it all seems valuable. And if you're a weird tech startup that couldn't get anybody to pay attention to you before this, there's a lot of opportunity now. And the smartest people, I think, people looking at the fashion industry and like what should you be investing in, it's like solutions to fix the supply chain, to make it easier, solutions to fix logistics. It's like all the really unsexy stuff, but that's the stuff that's going to make it easier for you to get stuff in your customer's hand, and for you to not think about that stuff so much, so you can think about being creative and like trying new things or what have you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have a quick
Yeah.
jump in question, because I'm just wondering for ourselves. Obviously, we're not going to like totally depart from wholesale, because we can't.
I wanted to defend wholesale.
No.
Because we simply can't afford to, and I'll let Catherine defend wholesale. But if we
Yeah.
start to do like more of this drop model, I love what you're talking about with Montclair and them dictating the schedule of when it hits the stores and really sticking to that. Like,
Yeah.
we deliver wholesale on that same schedule. You've also written about how independent brands need to mandate to their retailers, like, we can't be on such an insane delivery schedule where warm clothes arrive when it's cold out and cold weather clothes arrive when it's warm out. So like, if we start doing maybe more drops, a more frequent schedule, but less inventory, like, does it take rallying with other designers to get the retailers to say, okay, that's acceptable? Or like, how do we push those terms on the retailers?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. And that's what I hear. I talk to so many of you, and especially American brands. Like I know a lot of you have known you for a long time, and I really truly care about your businesses and admire what you've built. And the thing to me is like, it used to be, someone said this, a brand that is probably not doing very well right now, but it said the owner of the brand said this to me probably 3 or 4 years ago. They said when they launched, which was like in the middle of 2000s, like you had to be in Barney's to make it, and you don't need Barney's anymore. And I think the problem is like we were talking about before, there's still this mentality that like, oh, I'm a new brand, I need to get an exclusive with Barney's, and they're gonna make me not, or now Saks or Net-a-Porter or Matches, and they're gonna say I can't sell anywhere else. Like, and I think that attitude is going to go away. I know Nordstrom, for example, doesn't do that kind of stuff as much. Like they are much more focused on the relationship with the brand and less about having exclusives and holding on to them for that period. But I think I do think that retailers are going to they need exclusive product. They need to have things other people don't have. And so they are going to keep trying to pin brands into these contracts that say you can only sell exclusively to us in this area or what have you. And if all the brands kind of got together, you're going to all have different terms. Like some brands sell way more product than others. So sure, maybe they should have more favorable terms. But if you can all get together and say, this is the baseline of what we will not stand for anything less than this.
Yeah.
It would be really valuable because they need you more than ever. Like all the really, really big brands.
I fell asleep last night lecturing my husband about this, truly. And he asked
Yeah.
me before the call, he said, are you going to propose to Lauren the long conversation you made me listen to last night? But to your point about about brands of the US uniting, we've got to start setting terms. We can't say, all right, well, this department store breaks sale at the 8-week mark or the 10-week mark, and so we're just going to roll with it because we're the smallest guy. we are the smallest guy. So Nordstrom's doesn't really care if we say, please don't break sale at 10 weeks. But if we got together with every other jewelry designer in our peer group who they carry, if Nordstrom's is listening right now, I love you guys. This isn't you. I'm just using you as a placeholder.
I think Nordstrom
But
is great. That's all I hear.
But point being, if we could in some way get together and have at least baseline terms, of course you can't force the hand on everything. We're a capitalist society. But if we could have baseline terms about when sales season truly is, when the fashion calendar should truly be, what our TVs are, etc. We've got funny comments coming through. But
yeah, I saw.
I do think that there's got to be a new set of parameters. We won't even call it rules, that we all sort of work on. And just to really quickly defend wholesale, we're talking a lot about department stores, and I have a more pointed department store question for you next. But yeah. I will defend. We have amazing both department store partners, but also especially multi-label boutique partners. So regional stores in the Southeast, in San Francisco, in Boston, in Chicago, wherever, in Texas. And those partners are people who have come to our weddings, who have carried us for 10 years in and out. And so to the earlier point about wholesale being a broken model, I think in many ways it is. But I also think that when we were starting, we didn't have a website and maybe 5 people knew about it. So we could have never generated the cash flow had we not relied on wholesale orders. And even today, I mean, wholesale makes up a big enough part of the business. I just think that a lot of what we're talking about is really reevaluating what those wholesale partners look like post-COVID and like really narrowing them down to be the ones that actually treat you with kind of mutual respect.
Yeah, and what your business partnership looks like. And it's talking about these terms and things like that, but also like, should they get as much money as they get when they sell your product? Or should you guys have some sort of other, in fine jewelry, there's a lot of stuff where they work on concessions. So they give the product, and then maybe that's more of a model that happens more frequently. Or maybe it's, there's that store, I don't know if it's still open in Hudson Yards, that Brian Bulkey from started, where it was like almost drop ship. Mm-hmm. I think like there's going to be different models, but I agree. And I think also those specialty retailers, their whole business, like we were talking about that top tier of customer at the bigger stores, that's their whole business, is them like having this direct relationship with the customer. And so I agree. I think they're super valuable and important. And I also think, like when I said that the department stores need you guys more than ever, I think the biggest thing that we have to remember is the fashion industry is really, as we know it today, the luxury industry has really only existed for like 20 years. Before that, it was all independent companies. There were some billionaires, there were people who did well, but like the accessories, all that stuff, that only really started in the 90s. And then from when LVMH and Kering became like entities around 2000, and they've grown and grown and grown. And now, like, they're huge companies with predominantly, or trying to be predominantly, direct to consumer. Mm-hmm. So they're moving further and further away from the department stores, because a lot of them have these concessions where they have like a shop and shop and they really own it. And basically department stores are landlords, but they're even getting out of those. So the department stores, like, first of all, it's an opportunity for the department stores to get interesting again and to have a personality. And they are going to need brands like yours, because the big like Bulgari or whatever might not have a presence in a department store anymore because they don't really need to. But, and they might sometimes, because like you said, it's a nice thing. But I do think that, I think all of you should be talking all the time and trying to figure stuff out. It would be nice if there was an organization that you could rely on for that stuff. Mm-hmm. And maybe something will come out of this. But I do think that you guys have an opportunity here to change. And I do also think that a lot of the department stores that last, I do think they don't want to be in the situation that they're in either. And a few of them have leadership that will try to get out of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whether or not they'll be able to is another question. But I do think there are a few people in it now who are like, I want to build a real business. I don't want to just build something that like is basically predicated on quarterly sales that shareholders are looking at or what have you.
And obviously so many of the department stores are struggling so much, which is another thing that you've been writing about. And we know, Neiman's is on the brink of bankruptcy. And one thing that we've been talking about a lot is some of our independent retailers actually having some successes right now. We have one boutique that we love who had this motto on their homepage that said "too small to fail," which I loved because we have a really loyal customer base. They curate their shop so well. It's a small shop. I've actually never been there in person, but I'm on their website all the time. And I feel like it must be one of those places that every time you go in, there's something you want to buy because it's curated so well. So one thing we've been talking about how this could be a boon to some of our smaller retailers, and people are really talking about shopping small right now, but in that 3 to 6 months to a year mark, do you think there's just like retail amnesia where people forget about the small retailers again, or do you think people are going to really stick with the small retailers?
I think people are going to stick with them. And I think we've seen that. I've seen that even we've done a ton of stories. Alex on our team has done a ton of stories on marketing during the pandemic. And we did like how to talk to your customers, and we did do's and don'ts. And then recently we're like how to avoid COVID washing, because
Yes, I love that.
I'm on a group text with Claire and Erica, Claire Mazer and Erica Cerullo, who I believe are also listening and right now are all of our mutual friends. And today our friend texted us this horrible marketing message that was like, can't hug your mom, we've got you covered.
Right.
And so, but what I will say is that I went on a tangent. I just wanted to bring it up. It was so weird. But I think the interesting thing is like, right now it's the brands that you have a relationship with that people, because it's just like we live in Brooklyn, and I donated to when this all happened, we donated to the funds of my favorite restaurants here, of our favorite restaurants in LA, of our favorite place in Paris, like the places that we really care about. And I think previously it was okay to kind of be in an ivory tower and not, especially if you were a fancy brand, not kind of connect with your customer. And I think this period has shown that like having a personality and having some connection with your customer is really important. And I do think we talked about this. I think we had a piece last week. It was kind of, we do this op-ed every week and my boss wrote it, and it was about like fashion world without department stores, but it talked about these independent stores, and if they can make it through this, if they didn't have like so much debt that they're definitely going to go under, right. Like I just think I want to shop at those places. I want to support their stores that I love. And I bought my husband a pair of shorts, Nanamika shorts, from this menswear store, Canoe Club in I think it's Colorado Springs, and they sent us the wrong shorts. And I emailed him, and I emailed them. I said, hey, you guys sent us the wrong shorts. Like, I'm going to send these back. And he was like, we're so sorry. We're sending you the shorts right now. Here's a slip. And also we're going to send you something else. And so I sent the shorts back, but like, he didn't know. I could have never sent them back. He sent the shorts. He sent us a candle. And now my husband is shopping on there all the time. I mean, and I think like, and I think about the other experiences I've had during this with Uniqlo, for instance. I bought a whole bunch of Uniqlo used stuff right at the beginning of this, and my upstairs neighbor also bought a bunch of it, and it said that our packages were delivered on the same day, and they never got delivered. They were not here. They must have been delivered next door, and no, someone did not return them. They were not delivered to us. I had to call. I probably talked to FedEx 20 times. I talked to Uniqlo. You know what I had to do? I had to message them on social media.
That's a nightmare.
And then they can see that I'm a reporter at Business of Fashion and that I have this many Twitter followers. And I didn't do it publicly. I just DM. And then my roommate, I'm not my roommate, my upstairs neighbor had to do the exact same thing. And it's just like, that's a huge, huge company that should have that on lock, and they don't. And then there's the store in Denver or in Colorado Springs that, you know, made it so easy. And now my husband's like, oh, I'm going to buy this and this and this from there. And it just makes you, I do think that those stores that have been good to you guys, A, you're going to be better to them. And B, you know that that their customer cares.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, like, for Uniqlo to replace those orders would be such a tiny drop in the bucket for them. But like in the meantime, they're pissing you off to the point where you don't want to place an order with Uniqlo ever again. It's just so nuts.
And it was, most of it was sold out because it was like stuff that was sort of, I mean, their Uniqlo U is limited edition. So that like a lot of it was like at the end of the season and it was almost sold out anyway. So I think I did end up buying because they did give me a refund, but like I didn't buy as much as I bought the first time. And it made me just think like, ugh, this wasn't worth it for this stuff anyway. And I think that I don't shop a lot of fast fashion. I'd say Uniqlo is probably the only store that I personally buy a lot of that kind of stuff from, but it makes me not want to do it as much when things like that happen. And I think you guys have been smart to have such good relationships with the people who sell your stuff.
Yeah, we, I mean, you're definitely touching on, well, I have a lot of thoughts right now, but I think there's a few different buckets we're talking about. There's department stores versus boutiques. And then within both of those buckets, there's in-person versus online from the comfort of your sofa. And someone submitted a question a little while ago, which I think we're touching on, but I want to just definitely answer her question, which is, are we all going to get really comfortable after this, where we can buy things only online, whether you're buying from a Uniqlo or the small store in Boulder, Colorado? Or are you a diehard online shopper, or do you miss the touch and the feel? You mentioned Mariam Nazir Zadeh, which is an amazing boutique in the Lower East Side, which is curated with art objects and sculptures, and it's so inspiring. And what direct sales are one thing to be DTC, but it's a different thing to be online versus brick and mortar. And even some of our brick and mortar stores who are slowly reopening, Texas is reopening. We just got notifications that a few of our stores are going to reopen. I imagine they're still going to have a lot of customers who want curbside pickup right now, or don't want to go in a dressing room and try a garment on that someone else has just touched. So if you had a crystal ball and we're looking at the retail landscape 12 months from now, obviously department stores are going to have a huge shakeup regardless. That's sort of a given. Boutiques have an opportunity here. If they can survive, they definitely have an opportunity to grow that customer relationship. But then there's also the question of, where are we shopping from? Are we going to the boutique? Are we sitting at our computer more these days? How does the retail landscape from that perspective look to you in 12 months?
Yeah, it's so funny. So when I was working on this online, I think it's called the future of online luxury, the next wave of online luxury or something. And we were talking about this, and there's this stat that goes from Bain. We use a lot of their stats because they do these state of the luxury market or whatever. And their prediction was that 25% of sales of personal luxury goods would be online by 2025.
Wow.
So, and right now I think it's 10%.
Okay, wow, that's a huge increase.
But here's the thing. I think that's going to be next year now.
It's crazy.
I don't think it's going to come back. And I remember I interviewed Jose, the CEO of Farfetch, for this story. And he was like, well, you know, because I was like, well, what do you think it's going to look like 10 years from now? And he said, well, if you think about it, if only 25% is in, and there will be at some point some sort of leveling off, but he's like, if it's only 25% in 2025 and 2030, it could be even more. And there's just like a lot of opportunity. I mean, this year it's going to be obviously a huge, it's probably going to be 50% or something, but I think like next year, and when we get back to the new normal, yes, I think way more people are going to actually spend money online. I think we're going to see a lot more showrooming. And also the thing I talked to Holly, who's the CEO of Brown's, which is a department store in London. And then also I did a panel with her and this Steve Dennis guy, who's a retail consultant who I use as a source a lot. And they were talking about digitally enabled.
Mhm.
So Chanel doesn't have e-commerce, and they still may never, but they will make it so easy for a customer who is not in the store to buy stuff online, even if they don't actually have a click to buy. Like,
What is that?
I'm not having what?
Is that through Instagram, or how do they do it if they don't actually have an e-commerce?
I think so. I think that there are platforms, like a lot of these retailers have these customer relationship management systems that, it's even like you're texting with
Mhm.
the person or they're emailing you, or and I think that the way that operates will become more sophisticated. And yeah, it might be, I mean, they're already doing it through Instagram, but there might be even more sophisticated ways. Whether or not Chanel will actually end up having e-commerce, I think is debatable. They might have to do it after all of this, but I think that, like, it'll just much more of the actual selling, the actual purchasing will happen online. And I also think, we just did a story about, like, what is it going to look like to reopen?
Mhm.
And there is this idea of curbside pickup, which I think is just a story on Nike probably a year and a half ago. And we talked a lot about, in their store in West Hollywood, they have curbside pickup there. And they were already doing that. So, like, I think it's something that people are interested in anyway. And so now I think store hours may be shorter, but then you can schedule, say, boutique is open from noon to 4 now, or noon to 5, but from 9 to noon, they do one-on-one appointments. So
Yeah.
you can go in and have something. I also think, like, sanitizing clothing and stuff, like, I keep thinking, how do you sanitize clothes without damaging them, or
I
it
saw in
being
a letter today that every
gross?
garment would be steamed between every try on. But again, then after 10 steams, isn't the garment compromised? I don't know. I mean, I don't envy
Yeah,
people who own stores with a lot of clothing right now.
Yeah.
yeah,
I know the answer.
yeah. And I think, like, in terms of, for a lot of boutiques and retailers, they don't have that huge issue with that, because, like, even if you're a tiny boutique, you have like one customer that comes in a day or a week who makes your week. It's
Mhm.
not like and even going into a lot of those stores, like, even at the end with Barney's, like, they were still making a ton of money at the Madison Avenue store, and there was no one in there.
Mhm.
Because so much of it was already happening this way. So I think that like, there will be an in-store experience, and we won't know what that's going to really look like until there's a vaccine
Yeah.
Totally.
and we are all, like, not afraid of getting it every time we leave the house.
Totally. I'm
Absolutely.
definitely one of those people who's, like, historically has enjoyed the process of buying something in the store sometimes more than I have of actually wearing the piece after I've bought it. Like, having my mom sit in the dressing room with me and say yay or nay, or like striking up a conversation with a salesperson. Like, sometimes I enjoy that, and then I never even wear the thing that much. And I am
Right.
curious as to what that in-store experience looks like, whether that's an appointment or a one-on-one thing. And I know you don't have the crystal ball, but I think it's just going to be really interesting to discover that.
Right. And also, do brands like ours, like, people love to ask, oh, well, do you have a store in Soho? And then we kind of explain, like, no, because we don't have like $4 million. But obviously, like, I suppose
Yeah.
the dream, or the traditional dream, although I don't think Lizzie and I share this dream, is,
Yeah.
you launch a brand, you have wholesale, you have a great website, then eventually the pipe dream after 10 or 20 years, Ulla Johnson has shown us this, Rachel Comey's got beautiful stores, is you open a store.
Yeah.
It's a manifestation of your vision as the creative director. And
Yeah.
do we, because we never had a store, and if we ever get to the point where capital would allow us to have a store, do you just double down on your website? Do you double down on alternative selling, like a beautiful showroom on the 6th floor of our studio where people come up for private appointments? I mean, do brands like ours even aspire to have a flagship store anymore?
I think that what you just described, which is, like, spending more on making the website feel and the online experience feel more interesting, which you guys are already doing just by the like mix of product you have on there. But also the showroom thing, I love that. I think it's super fun, and I think you will see a lot more of that. And also, what's the other point I was going to make? I do think it was something about e-commerce, and we were talking about stores. I can't remember. It was something about how to, oh, the other thing that I think is a big, like, you guys are writing handwritten notes thanking everybody. I think that the unboxing experience, especially for fashion and cool brands, is so important and is going to become increasingly important.
We've
And
been
if you
packaging for years, so this is, you will
yeah, and
a follow-up questionnaire about this, Lauren.
well, there are two parts of it. One is that you have to be eco-friendly now.
Yeah.
So you have to figure all of that out.
Yeah.
And then the second part is like, what is the experience? So at the beginning of this year, I decided that I was only going to buy secondhand. I was going to not buy any new stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as this happened, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm going to just buy new stuff because I feel horrible and I need to buy a couple things. But I have shopped on the RealReal before and I really like it. I've sold stuff on the RealReal, but I bought two things on there, and to be honest, like, they do an okay job, but I was just like, this wasn't as fun as when I get something from Matches, and even though I get their eco-friendly packaging, I pull it open and the inside of the eco-friendly packaging has been printed with a peacock print. So
Yeah.
even though I'm not getting the fancy box that they give when you get the non-eco, it just makes it such a nice experience. They use way too much tissue paper, but that's another story. But I do think, like, that is part of, if you can't try it on in the store and you can't go into Bird and you can't have them be like, oh, that looks so good on you, or you should get that, or I have this item for you. They, like, the experience of the thing being delivered to you and it feeling special is going to be even more important than it already is. And I feel like you guys are so creative, and you'll figure out ways to do that don't cost like a crazy amount of money. The hard part is factoring in the eco-friendly thing. And I really want our reporter who focuses on like social responsibility and environmentalism and all that stuff to do a story on the packaging wars, because it's just going to get crazy.
There's a captive audience there.
One thing I super quickly want to touch on is, obviously there's a lot more marketing that we all have to do now that we have less in-store experience. So whether that's Instagram or more mailers, I know we've heightened it and we're seeing good loyalty and follow through as a result of that. You quickly touched on the COVID washing, but can you give examples of any brands that are doing a really good job of selling while being sensitive right now? Because I know that can get tricky.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys are. And you're the perfect brand for Zoom calls. So that is a good thing. And it's appropriate for you guys to be talking about that. The two brands that stand out to me are Entire World, which, it's an LA based brand of sweats and like kind of basics in really great colors. The guy who started it is the founding designer of Band of Outsiders as well. But they sell these like matching sweatsuits, which obviously is like perfect fodder for this era, but also were really trendy before all this happened anyway. But the first week that we were all in lockdown, he sent an email on Sunday morning, and it was like a photo of him, and it was an email from him, and he was just like, this situation is very messed up, and I'm really sorry, and it's creepy and weird, and here's 25% off the sweatsuits. He didn't need to give 25% off those sweatsuits. Those sweatsuits are going to sell anyway. But he did. And it was just like, I could tell he wrote it. It didn't say, like, one thing that I think a lot of brands have done is they talk about their community, and like a lot of brands don't have a community. Right. So it's like, and BOF, we every email that we write every night says, Dear BOF community. Like, we talk about it because we feel that we actually do have one, but like a lot of people don't have them, and they shouldn't be like, Dear, random contemporary brand community. Like you don't have a community. But so I think that the other brand that I think has done a really good job, and I'm wearing it right now, is Baba, which is it's this knitwear brand. A bunch of my friends have bought Baba sweaters, including, if I'm sure Britt is not listening to this, but Britt Abutala bought one and it like forced me to buy one. But it's this Madrid based knitwear brand. It's like the cutest cuts ever, like it's just so gorgeous. Everything is like under Jessie Randall saying she loves Baba. It's so good. And it's all direct to consumer. I think she sells at like Ouroboros and a couple other little stores, but everything's under $300. It's not cheap, but like between 150 and $300 for all this amazing knitwear. And she's been doing like a very light discount, I think, like, and using the word spread love or something. And she's posting all the stuff from her community, and the stuff is just beautiful. And I don't need another sweater, but I am on a lot of Zoom calls I'm doing a lot of these live events for BOF, and I've been like, I need more color. I wear all brown and black and gray. So I bought one, and I think she's doing a nice job and I do think I've seen it. Rachel Comey did a really nice thing where it was like, buy a pair of earrings and we'll send a pair to like anyone you want, or like someone who needs them, which I thought was like a nice way to, and I think like, I do think it's just like the way that it's obvious you're doing your Instagram and you're on there and you're doing this kind of stuff. Like, this is really nice. People don't need to do it. And it's just, you're doing it because you care. And I think, who was it that whose Instagram did you two take over recently?
Well, we did Man Repeller earlier this week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I loved that. And I know that's not marketing, but like, I just thought it was super fun and
very collaborative and happy and energizing.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time. I can't believe it. We honestly might need to do a part 2 with you, Lauren, because we are like the fastest.
We could just keep talking.
But speaking of community, and also speaking of this like heightened exposure, like you're doing so many Zoom calls, we're doing things with Man Repeller. Do you think, I know a lot of people in the BOF community, which you're right, is a real community, have commented on stories on your guys' website that they love the heightened access right now? Do you think
I've seen actually comments on BOF Instagram saying like, don't take this away from me post-COVID. So people are loving what you guys are putting out there too, for the record.
Is the heightened access something that you think will continue? Or again, like, is there amnesia where when everyone gets back to work and gets heads down, we're going to forget about—
and gets on airplanes again and starts traveling.
Yeah, are we going to forget about the Zooms, the calls, the podcasts with, people like you who the average person in the fashion industry doesn't typically have access to?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just going to give you the 7 minutes warning. So if we get cut off, people, there will be a part 2.
There'll be a part 2.
We've got plenty more questions.
We'll also put this on our Instagram TV so you can watch it there as well.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you guys for having me. You're so nice. I think that there will be more. We'll keep doing it. Like I want to do more podcasts anyway, and we had planned that for this year. But this I mean, it's crazy to me how many people show up for those events, and we're gonna have more people from other editors. I'm not gonna be the only one. Right now I'm hosting all the like only for subscribers events. Imran is doing a ton of stuff on Instagram Live, and like he's like interviewing all the celebs and stuff, and I'm doing more of the like industry. Like tomorrow morning we have one with Chantal and Brian on our team about how to like manage your excess inventory, like how to deal with it. You don't have to burn it all or whatever. So I think we're going to keep doing those. And I think they're really nice to do as Zooms. And I am not a person, I'm an introvert, and like every call they want to do Zoom, and I'm always like, no, I can't do another Zoom call. But for this kind of stuff, I think it's really valuable. Like we have people come up to the stage and they ask questions, and that's really nice. And I think that like, yes, I think that the more audio and the more interaction with the community and the audience, because like before we were just thinking too inside the box of that, we have to have we do this conference at the end of the year, but only 150 people are invited. It's really expensive. And like, then we do these little things, and we were like, how can we do more things where we can have more people in the community? And now we know. So I think, yes, I think it's going to keep happening as long as people show up. And I also think, I don't think people are going to be traveling as much. I don't think they're going to be getting on as many planes. I think that, and I think that that's not going to, yes, for the next year for sure. But I think long term, like, this is the only thing you can compare this to is the Great Depression or World War II. And that fundamentally changed how people live their lives. And I do think that this will. What that means, I have no idea, but I do think it will change the way people live. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope we keep doing them. I love doing it. And it's so nice to see when you see like that many people on the participants list of Zoom, you're just like, oh my God, these people actually really need this information. And it's also driving us to like do better work and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
So yes, I do.
We're listening to our audiences more. We're not just putting stuff out there and hoping it sticks. We're getting questions. We're answering them real time. We haven't even scratched the surface on travel and whether you're ever going to go to Milan and Paris again for a fashion week and how we're going to be doing fashion weeks in the future. But I think that, I think there's a lot more here for part two.
Part two for sure. And
yeah.
In our last few minutes, lightning round, anyone you're loving on Instagram right now, and then anything you're loving, podcast, television,
self-care,
just anything.
Okay. Oh my God. I haven't watched Normal People yet, but I will. Okay. I just watched Never Have I Ever. I've been watching that. It's like a Netflix teen show with Mindy Kaling. This is very lowbrow. I read this amazing book, one of my favorite journalists, James Stewart. It's called Den of Thieves, and it's about the insider trading scandal in the 80s. It's amazing. It won the Pulitzer. It's so good. But then I just started reading another recommendation from our friend Claire Mazur. The Idea of You, which is this like romance novel about this woman who falls in love with a Harry Styles boy band type character that Claire is obsessed with. And so I'm reading that. Yeah, it's self-care. I bought myself an Hermes lipstick before this all happened, and I'm really glad I did. I love it so much. And TV, I also, if you want something stylish, I watched this show called Giri Haji, which is on Netflix. It's BBC. It's half Japan, half London. It's very like everyone's in like Margaret Howell. Cool. It's very chic and stylish. So I've been I don't want to say like this is really hard, but it's been good for me. I travel a lot, and it's been nice to like not be able to and have to just like sit in your life. Yeah. So this is a horrible situation, but I do think for those of us who have been able to stay healthy, it's been an opportunity to reflect and refocus on life.
I like sitting in your life. Yeah. Leave us with that, and thank you so much, Lauren. This has been invaluable. This is absolutely incredible, and I think it sounds like how fashion weeks and market weeks will function will be maybe the theme of an upcoming conversation. Awesome. So maybe we'll bring you in with a buyer and make sure you guys are on the same page, so we know what.
I love it.
Fantastic. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. This has just been great.
Thanks, guys. It was so good to see you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining, everybody.
Bye.